Okay, welcome to Power Hour. Well, it's going to be Power 38 minutes. It's 3:22 p.m. on January 13th. We had a wild day today, but I'm back to trade for you. We're going to try to get one more trade in. We're going to do 5 contracts. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. We're going to do 10 contracts on a Nasdaq. Risk of about 5,000. So obviously 2 to 1 is our goal. Try to make 10,000. But we'll be happy, always happy with profits. So we'll see what happens here. We'll see what the market gives us here in this last hour. And I'll walk through you through kind of what I do, setting up a trade. You can see it for yourself. And obviously, as always, if you have any questions, just hit me in the comments and see how I can help you. So without further ado, let's pull up the charts here. And we're on Nasdaq. So as you can see here, we had an absolute crazy day. So I'll kind of go through what I did earlier. Let's get some of this junk off here. Some of the Bollinger stuff. So I have some of my trades marked from earlier. I did play that bottom. And then on my other broker platform, I took a nice short this morning when it broke this bottom area here. So we had CPI news today. CPI data, inflation data came in and came in better. I believe it came in at 2.6 with a 2.7 expectation, which is good for a potential other rate cut in January. But I don't think the market's really buying that Powell's going to pull another rate cut. There's some drama with him and Trump now, with some indictment, some nonsense. So I think the market's kind of baking in that another rate cut probably isn't going to happen anytime soon. Market's very overbought right now. We're at all-time highs. So I'm not really all that shocked that it popped on the initial inflation news at 8:30, as you can see here, and then popped again a little bit at open, kind of double topped right there. And since then, it took a deep hit and then kind of recovered back, ran back up to the top again. And now we are back down here at the bottom here for the end of the day. So what we're trying to figure out here is, if we do take a trade, which, I'm going to most likely do something here, see what the market gives us. But again, this right here is kind of a MACD and we have an RSI here. I'm a very simple price action trader. I do use algorithms. I use volume profile. I use a lot of things, but I like to keep it simple. And the most important thing to me is obviously market conditions. When we have MACD type algorithms and indicators that are kind of in that middle zero line area, it usually means a choppy market. So, you can pull back here a little bit. You see when we're kind of within this area, you see some chop in the market. So we want to be entering trades when we're either deeply oversold or, super overbought. That's kind of like our setups. Again, that's not the only thing we look for, but that's the first thing we're going to look for. So if we don't see that, we're not taking a trade because there's no use. And, the biggest problem I've had as a trader, becoming a better trader over the years is just staying out of this nonsense. I call it a snotty market, call it chop, call it whatever you will, but it just sucks because all you're going to do is bleed money out into the market and lose most of the time, and it's really challenging. But when you're at these major points, obviously it's usually before a bigger move. Again, when you're deeply oversold, you usually get a big reversal and so on and so forth. So that's just kind of like the basics of, where I start my trades. If we don't see that, but here, we might be making a new bottom here by the end of the day. Again, power hour could be a little different sometimes. So again, we're deeply oversold, but we're looking to possibly get more oversold. And that is our issue here. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to mark this bottom here. We're not going to do anything until we either get some sort of a big reversal on this MACD and start seeing it roll back up to that zero line. Or if we come down to this bottom here, then we might start looking to get into something. But in the meantime, we're just going to kind of sit here and wait. Again, most of trading is waiting for your setups. Again, I do love trading 9:30. Most of my trades happen early in the morning because you're going to get action right at 9:30. So it's kind of like a set time period where you have that. But the rest of the day, even during power hour, you never really know what you're going to get. You got to be patient and just kind of sit and wait. And that's what we're doing here. So we're seeing a drop here. Let's see what happens when we hit this bottom. Again, we've hit this bottom 1, 2, 3 times already today. So we'll see. If we start moving upwards here, I'm going to take a long trade. Let me get my trade ready here. Let me get prepared so I can fire a banger quick if we need to. But that's kind of where we're looking. So again, down, over here, I'm looking for this to start to move upwards on the MACD, and I'd like to see RSI cross to the upside. Those are just the first things that we need to see here. There's a couple of things that I generally look at, but without that, we're not going anywhere. And that's the key to my patience as a trader. That's what keeps me out of the market. And I would say if I were to look at my, I think a lot of traders can agree with this. If you look back at your career, if you took out half of the stupid mistakes you made, you would have made a lot more money. It's not always how much you make, it's how much you don't lose. And by staying the hell out of a disastrous market, garbage market, that's going to save you a lot. And this is just how I do it. This is how I keep it simple. Some guys use ADX, some guys use ATR. There's a bunch of ways to measure market condition, but for me, it's real simple. If I'm not in an overbought or oversold area, or it's 9:30 in the morning and we're trending in one of those directions, there might be some other things I look at. But for the most part, I'm looking for some strong directional momentum and some a potential setup for, some more momentum, coming again. The market's non-linear, market's unpredictable. One things we can predict is when the market's overbought and oversold, and that can be used to our advantage. So it looks like we're going to possibly get the short here. We're really digging deep here. If it does break this bottom, I'm really going to look for a retest of it, So that's the other thing here, because this isn't really part of my trading style to trade this. Again, it's something I do trade earlier today with more volume. I'd be less nervous about it. But again, this might break bottom here, and a lot of traders would just jump in short. But again, we got some more bottoms from earlier today, some value areas, where there was a lot of volume. So it could just jump down and instantly bounce back up. So the last thing we want to do here is get into a heavy short, just for it to rubber band on us or snap on us. So I'm going to wait for it to break, to come back to the line and retest and starts going down again. That's what I would most likely enter a short trade. What I am hoping to see here is a bounce to the top side to the end of the day, but we'll see. But we really need to almost break this second bottom here. That's really the challenge here, because, we're going to break this current bottom, but question, we're going to get a lot of buyers coming into the market when that happens. So I'm really kind of thinking upside here. I'm thinking that this is probably going to get into this area between these two lines, and we might start to see momentum shift to the upside. And if my linear regression starts showing, obviously top side momentum and a lot of buyers coming into the market, then we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to check while we're waiting. I'm going to throw the volume profile, some volume profile up, just like today's volume profile, just so we can kind of get an idea of where all the volume is today. And this is, again, a lot of guys overtrade volume profile. I don't go that crazy with it, but I do like to see where the volume is for today. That is going to tell me. And I also like to see where the low volume areas are, because we call these air pockets. Because if the price gets back in here with a lot of momentum, it's going to fly through it. That's what happens in an air pocket. You also see the same thing on the downside. So I'm just kind of looking at, I'm gauging that. So in case we do get in along here and we go take it all the way up here and we break, we might get a monster move. There's also no volume down low, very little, that actually caught this to go back up. All the volume kind of ended here. So we're kind of on the outside of this volume profile, kind of in no man's land. So it's very possible this thing dumps into the close, since we do have a lot of downside momentum. So I do like what I'm seeing here. So I'm looking for the retest at this point. We've broken in there. Let's see a retest to this line. And if we get that, I'm probably going to trigger a short here. Again, we're going to go 10 contracts. So again, $5,000 is our risk. So let's see if we can get it right. but I do feel like this is going to snappy roofski on us. So I'm starting to change a little bit of my perspective here because we're getting some aggressive selling here. But I do still think we're going to get the little pop-up just for some buyers being on this level. So we're keeping our eye on it here. Again, patience is everything. Problem with doing these lives is, I want to jump in and do something and get something done. But this is trading. Trading's boring, unfortunately. And usually I'm still kind of waiting here. I do like the possibility of a long here. I think we're going to get a really nice bounce here. Low volume area, we got some good volume. That's going to be our entry. We're going to target that top there. I like that a lot. So we're in 10 contracts. We're going for a one. I would say it's going to be a little more than about a 1.75 to 1 to get to this level. That's where I see it going. So you can see it clearly. So we're up 700 on the trade. Everything's going the way I like to see it right now. This is exactly what I want to see in a trade. This is looking really good. So we're up 1,000, 1,100. Again, we're shooting for this target here of about 2.75 to 1, or I'm sorry, 1.75 to 1, which is, almost 2 to 1. So it's not quite going to be a $10,000 winner. Let's see what it would be. If we get it all the way up there, yeah, it's going to be around 5,300. So I like that. I'll probably close it before that. And again, our stop, we're going to start trailing it here in a minute because we're getting some good distance on it. So we're up healthy in a trade. I'm going to move the stop. So now it's like $700 is the most we can lose. 850. I'm trailing that stop up there just in case it snaps on us. I'm going to move it halfway up this candle now. 1250 is our total risk. Here we go. 2300. 1850. 2650. Still going here. My candle is following it all the way up to the top. So 2850 is our max now. Max loss. So again, we cannot lose in this trade at this point. We are good. And that's it. So $2,850 on a power hour trade. I am very happy with that. I'm not going to make another trade today. It's 3:40. We had a crazy morning, and I came back to try to sneak one more in, and we got a beautiful setup. So thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I would be more than happy to help. And that is me signing off for today. So hope you enjoyed, and happy trading. And again, money management, risk management is everything. If you got to learn a strategy, absolutely. But it's all about timing and entries and staying out of the market when it sucks. So when it's choppy and it sucks, you want to be long gone. See you guys later.